My Little Pony is a cartoon show aimed at children, which showcases the main characters working through an assortment of problems as they strive to become better friends. At first it seems innocent enough, but just like any cartoon that's launched itself into popularity, the series hides a few well-kept, dark secrets that would shock any parent. So, sit back and join me as I cover the top 10 darkest MLP secrets. Number 1. Moments of Madness. If you've been a fan of MLP for long enough, you've had the chance to glimpse a few choice breakdowns. Not only do we see our favorite characters fall into depression, experience psychosis, and even become delusional, but we're given a look at their mental pitfalls regularly during the series. Ever since the show began, these moments have been popping up here and there, often passed off as being funny or amusing, when truly the mental illnesses that they mimic are anything but laughable. More often than not, the characters bounce back, but that doesn't mean that their moment of insanity was forgotten, especially by viewers. What makes this my dark secret number 1 is that most of the flashes we get of our favorite ponies losing their minds give us enough evidence to link them to a serious mental illness just by seeing the symptoms appear and then even reappear in smaller doses throughout the rest of the series. While most viewers can't pinpoint exactly what's wrong, the trained eye can spot these moments where mental illness is alluded to. And that's not really kids' show material in the slightest. If you're interested in hearing more, check out the video on my other channel where I break down each instance and explain just exactly what's happening. The link to that will be at the end of the video. Number 2. Screw Loose. There is an infamous chase scene in the episode Read It and Weep, where we see Rainbow Dash being chased by the police, all while a dog is barking unrelentingly, or so we're led to believe. But when we're given a closer look moments later as a trio of ponies corner Rainbow Dash, we get to see what's actually happening. A cop appears, Dr. Stable, and even a nurse, but the most interesting of all is the pony behind the three of them. When she enters the scene, it becomes clear she's the one doing the barking, not just some random stray dog, and that's when things get even darker. I can't be truly sure if it's Dr. Stable who speaks to her or the cop, but as the camera moves to center itself on her, someone remarks, "Hey, get back to the hospital." Now, not only is she shown making a strange, deranged face, but she's wearing what looks to be a bathrobe, just like patients used to wear back in the older days while being attended to at a psychiatric hospital. Better yet, it's plain to see that her cutie mark is a screw, which could literally mean a bunch of things. The most easy explanation is that her mind is quite literally, quote-unquote, screwed up, since she's seen behaving like a dog and has clearly been a patient in the past. After a moment or so, we see her chased off by the police pony. But that's not the last time Screw Loose appears. In fact, in the episode Just For Sidekicks, in a panning frame, as Spike is running past a village house pulled by the pets he's sitting for, you can see her in the background, barricaded inside, still wearing her bathrobe and being looked after by a common background nurse. So we know that her being mentally unsound wasn't just a gag by the creators, or some joke that made one single appearance and then faded away. The fact that she's still seen around a nurse makes it clear that since the episode Read It and Weep, she's still being monitored for one reason or another, even though we don't see her barking or acting strange in this episode. Many fans have theorized about what this means, what exactly it is that makes her unsound, and how it developed, or how she even ended up in the care of a hospital to begin with. But to me at this point, it doesn't matter, since the dark allusion to mental instability and hospitalization doesn't really have a place in a kids' show. Or at least not one I'd want to have to explain to an impressionable child who just happened to pick up on it by accident. Number 3. Funeral Scene. Normally heavy topics like death and dying aren't really addressed in MLP. Often a villain will meet a bitter end, going up in flames or just disappearing altogether. But it's not like we see their body somewhere in a grave or anything else that lets us know for certain that they're dead. King Sombra disappears in a ball of white light, being literally blown to bits without blood or guts, just a single lost horn. And even Queen Chrysalis was literally thrown miles away but appears episodes later right as rain. A large selection of villain-animal hybrids, including T-Rex, are even seen in Season 8 behind bars in a prison, simply wasting away, but still just as alive as ever. So in the episode Hearts and Hooves Day, when the Cutie Mark Crusaders begin singing a song about finding the perfect stallion for Cheerilee, we don't expect to see a scene that's closer to death than anything the seasons have provided us with thus far. As the CMCs are singing about every pony they assess and their downfalls, they happen upon a scene where the available stallion is marked as too old. What we don't realize is that the stallion in question is actually a pastor conducting a funeral, complete with a podium and a coffin literally right there beside him. But even though the Cutie Mark Crusaders have just interrupted what should have been a somber, respectful event, they simply continue on singing even after rudely crashing some pony's funeral. Are they simply uncaring, or is there really no regard for the death of another pony? Since the answer isn't ever really addressed, this scene makes it onto my Dark Secrets list because we may never know. Whether the Crusaders just don't care or no pony does, it's still a mystery to me. Number 4. Slender-Mane. Now, this one made it onto my list because it's probably one of the darkest fandom crossover secrets that I could find. If you're not familiar with Slender-Man, he's the main character in a game of the same name, where he plays a haunting antagonist. It's a first-person survival horror game where you're charged with collecting pages in a dark forest while avoiding being caught by the Slender-Man himself. In the game, he's a tall, faceless man dressed in a black suit and red tie, and often enough he can be seen with various black arms that look more like tentacles than human appendages. Being that he's one of the most recognized characters in horror gaming, it's surprising to even think about him appearing in My Little Pony. But, like other secrets on this list, his shocking appearance did actually take place. In the MLP episode Pinky Apple Pie, while the camera is following Pinky, who's on a crash course for her friend Applejack, you can just glimpse a figure in the background. If you slow the footage down considerably, there is no mistaking the white, faceless, suit-wearing pony in the background. It doesn't help at all that the scene is shot in a forest-like area, which is exactly where the Slender-Man game is set. Again, being that Slender-Man is iconic for his horror-inducing game, seeing him appear in a kids' show is pretty darn haunting. Most viewers probably missed out on this entirely, so even though it's very jarring, creepy, and really odd in and of itself, most kids probably never saw it at all, much less put 2 and 2 together. But to those of us who are familiar with Slender-Man, it's a very interesting thing to see. Number 5. Starlight Glimmer. If you're a pony fan, you've religiously watched episode after episode, and have no doubt been introduced to one of the newer characters, Starlight Glimmer. Not only is she best known for practically brainwashing an entire town of ponies and impounding the main 6 after literally stripping them of the only thing that makes ponies unique and seems to give their life direction. But she's the first villain to make an escape at the end of her duet episode, The Cutie Map, Part 2. What most don't know is that between her last sighting and the season finale, she appears in the background secretly more than once. Now originally, this isn't entirely shocking. She is a villain after all. But the idea that she's been secretly stalking the main 6 without interfering, showing up in a few different scenes after being the pony literally charged with brainwashing, imprisonment, and even tampering with the past, is just a little bit unsettling. Especially when we see her so at home in the background of unrelated episodes, watching and waiting for her time to strike.
Number 6. Parentless Scootaloo. Season 7 and so far Season 8 have given us a lot of answers that we've been waiting for. Revealing Applejack's parents, along with many other parental figures, gave us a fuller picture of where our favorite ponies actually came from. We meet Fluttershy's brother, are introduced to Applejack's parents' backstory, and even get to see Rainbow Dash's parents. But there's one thing that still bothers me to this day, and so far it hasn't been explained. And that's Scootaloo. Being that she is one of the members of the Cutie Mark Crusaders, it would have made sense that just like with Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle, we'd know something about her past or her family. But throughout seasons 1 through 8, so far we still don't know anything about her family, making her one of the only ponies seen going through life's trials and heartaches with only friends and her idol Rainbow Dash for support. The fact that a character so important to the plot of many episodes still hasn't been claimed by a family or given a proper backstory is dark enough. But pair that with the way that she always seems to be idolizing Rainbow Dash kind of makes me begin to think. In the episode Parental Guidance, she's seen becoming very close to Rainbow Dash's parents, almost as if she's been starved for attention, which would make sense if her parents weren't around. But the fact that such a unique plotline refuses to give us info on one of the main characters is dark enough to make it onto this list, because for all we know, she could be living alone in a shack somewhere.
Number 7. Spike's father. In the episode Father Knows Beast, we're introduced to a dragon who crashes in town, and then, after hearing about Spike's lack of a parent, or parents, claims to be his father. Another backstory-less character, much like Scootaloo, we haven't really been told much about Spike's past before being awoken by Twilight, when she gained her cutie mark. But when the random dragon gives a semi-convincing story that half-heartedly explains some of Spike's questions, the episode continues with Spike trying to learn how to become a real dragon, while checking off a long list of things he's been dreaming to do with his parents, or more importantly, with his father. If you haven't seen the episode yet, I'm issuing a spoiler alert right now, so be warned. Throughout the episode, we see Sludge, Spike's self-proclaimed father, literally make himself at home in Twilight's castle, ordering Spike around and living the high life, all while pretending to be bound by blood to Spike. In essence, it's probably supposed to be a comic thing, but in reality, the entire episode is really messed up. Not only is the freeloading dragon basically living off Twilight and Spike's generosity, but being that they're not related whatsoever, it also means that some random, older dragon is holing up in the castle where Princess Twilight sleeps. After all, we forget, but Sludge is an adult dragon, large enough to do damage in a variety of scenes. Knowing that he and Twilight, and even Spike, are all staying in the same living space kind of gives me the creeps, to be honest. It isn't until you find out that he fabricated his backstory that this all begins to make sense and leaves you with a really dirty feeling. After all, if this were real life, that would be like picking up a drifter who claimed to be related to you, convinced some of your friends it was true, used you, abused you, began living in your house, and then when he was finished, renounced everything and left you high and dry. Pretty dark if you ask me. Number 8. Eating other animals. This is a general point that can be made in a lot of shows centered around animals, MLP being no exception. It's hardly a secret that ponies and other creatures are sentient beings in MLP that take up a space that a human might in a show centered around humans. But there's a semi-fine line that divides them from other animals like birds, some dogs, some cats, cows, sheep, and pigs. Now note that I am saying some because Rarity's cat Opalescence is fully cat.
While on the other hand, Capper from the recent MLP movie is also a cat, however an anthropomorphic one that talks, schemes, and is fully sentient.
What separates the two of them? I'm not even really sure. The same goes for dogs too, since Winona is Applejack's pet, but the Diamond Dogs who kidnap Rarity are also anthropomorphic, and are at least part dog. So it seems like some animals are still animals, while others are more like humans, and some fall into the gray zone between the two. Even so, pushing those things aside, there's one scene that still kind of rubs me wrong. If you watch it at first, it's kind of hard to see what's really going on, but if you take the time to look into it, it's something that I find pretty dark. In one case, we see Fluttershy feeding some of her animal friends. It looks like a normal scene. She's charged with taking care of them, and so she provides them with food, like any good pet parent would. But in this case, we actually see her feeding 2 carnivores, ferrets and birds. And she's feeding them with other animals. Yes, that's right, she's seen tossing 2 fish to a pair of ferrets and spitting a trio of worms into the mouths of waiting birds. So it's only fair to ask that since she can understand the squeaks of a squirrel, the barks or whining of a dog, and the purring of a cat as if they're speaking English, what sort of semi-silent communication was going on and being ignored between her and the fish and worms? Now I know they can't make noise like the other animals she communicates with, but some of the other animals engage in nodding or even motioning to get their points across. So wouldn't the frantic flipping of the fish when they'd been snatched up in Fluttershy's mouth prior to being offered to the ferrets, or even the squirming of the worms, be enough for her to understand that they weren't happy? Or does she simply ignore them and any messages that they're trying to send her? Either way, it's an unintentionally dark scene, however you slice it. Number 9. Bridling Scene. In our world, ponies and horses are animals often saddled, bridled, and assigned to some sort of task, whether it's carrying humans, supplies, or both. And while My Little Pony is focused around ponies, we rarely see them use the same hardware we use for horses and ponies in our modern world. While we do see them pull carts or wagons, they're never being forced to do so by some other higher being, but rather doing it because they want to or need to in the given situation. Being that they take up the place of humans in MLP, they put other animals to work instead, and function at the highest level of awareness. Applejack's seen keeping pigs, her dog Winona herding cows, and we even see other animals performing simple tasks on command as well throughout the series. So it would stand to reason that ponies are never forced to do anything by another species, even though there have been a scant few scenes where ponies are caged, chained, or otherwise kept from moving freely. It's very seldom that a bridle is shown, except for one kind of large scene that I know always upset me. I'm not completely certain what episode it's in, but for one reason or another, on their way to perform a daring rescue, Spike can be seen sitting on Twilight's back while Twilight has a rope tied around the front of her face. After breaking off a stalactite from the wall above, he points it forward like a sword and orders her to move. Now in this scene she refuses at first, asking him, "Just what do you think you're doing?" But after he says, "Please, Twilight, just give me this," she sighs, saying fine, then assumes a bucking posture, makes a real pony sound, and then gallops off. Now normally that might seem kind of silly and comical, but this scene somewhat mimics what breaking a real horse is actually like. At first they're resistant and unhappy, but after getting used to a saddle or bridle, they're pretty much worked into submission and then made to obey, kind of like in this scene between Twilight and Spike. The fact that she's a talking pony gives us hidden insight into what she's thinking, but being that ponies take on the role of humans in this show, and Spike is the one binding the Princess of Friendship, and then riding her off into the sunset, it kind of looks like dragons have the upper hand here. And, if they wanted to, could control ponies. Yeah, that's dark enough for me. Number 10. Luna can control and enter dreams. Luna is probably one of the most beloved ponies in the MLP fandom. Not only does she satisfy the need for an edgy, darker character that's backstory makes just about everyone think twice about sleeping through the night, but she's witty, stars in a lot of her own episodes, and is a perfect counterbalance for Princess Celestia. There's just one thing that gets me every time. Princess Luna, along with controlling the rising of the moon, also has the ability to see inside other ponies' dreams. It is a cool power, I'm not gonna lie there guys, but there's also an extremely unsettling element to it. She's seen entering several other ponies' nightmares, seeing the things that frighten them, and then offering her own wisdom or advice. And honestly, that's all good and fine, at first. But when you look deeper, the dark truth comes to light. In the episode Do Princesses Dream of Magic Sheep, Luna is seen having influence over an entire town of dreaming ponies. It's probably safe to say she could see inside the minds of ponies from neighboring places as well if she wanted to. Being that she can see just about everyone's private, personal, dormant thoughts, it's fair to assume she's seen her fair share of murderous, dark, creepy, or even incriminating dreams. Since we've seen that other ponies, such as our main villains, have dark plans and intentions, it's pretty safe to assume that they've had even darker intentions that they've dreamt up at one time or another in their dreams. This means that Luna may have seen, heard, or even had some other sort of idea of impending danger before it ever happened. The same could be said about other ponies that had visited town at one point, like Cozy Glow from Season 8, or even Chrysalis, who appears again in Season 8 as well. Surely the two of them had to have slept sometime between plotting and carrying out their plans. And if they had, wouldn't Luna have been able to tell what they were scheming? Now guys, I'm sure this theory has a loophole, or many loopholes, but even if she wasn't able to see dreams that matter, The fact that she can enter a pony's personal thoughts during rest could reveal a lot of embarrassing things too. Either way, I don't think I'd want the President of America to look into my dreams without my consent, so the fact that Luna is widely accepted, even though surely her subjects know of her powers, is pretty darn dark to me. Well guys, those are my top 10 dark MLP secrets. If you like this video, hoof it on over to my other channel and check out a similar video I have posted there that analyzes ponies, their breakdowns, and mental illness as a whole. I'll leave a link at the end of this video, guys. If you're new, feel free to leave a sub or comment down below and I'll do my best to respond. If you want to see more content like this, let me know there. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, stay awesome.